Grew up in Lower Stony Creek on Corman Avenue. It was Dad, when I was maybe about 5 or 6, Dad said to Mom, I think we need to take the girls to church. Well, the we didn't happen, but the she happened. She took us to church, and we went to Stony Creek Alliance Church and went to Sunday school and young people's, and that was our second family. I don't know that I understood faith, but I thought being good, you know, was, I knew about salvation, but I really didn't need to have faith, I didn't think. I just needed to be good. And once, you know, I got married at 18, which we didn't have children for about 4 or 5 years, but when I got married at 18, there was so much I hadn't experienced as a kid and as a teenager that I thought, oh, this is fun. Well, you know, the drinking started, the smoking started. You know, I kind of fell away from walking with the Lord. I forgot about going to church, but I didn't forget about all those people that were in my life from the church. And it was interesting because I would see, you know, one of them or a couple of them in the creek somewhere, and they never made me feel guilty, but at the end of our conversation, they would always say, I'm still praying, Joanne. I say, okay. But you know, it was their prayers that probably stopped me from doing a lot of things. And my mom's prayer. My mom was a real prayer warrior. And then we decided we were going to start our family. So we had our firstborn daughter, and then we got pregnant with, about 3 years later, got pregnant with our second baby, and she just rounded out our family. And then, when she was about 3, alcoholism took hold of my husband, and we separated. And so I was a single mom with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, 5 and 2. But God entered in. The neighbor had heard about this woman down, you know, about 4 doors down, who all of a sudden was a single mom, and just came and knocked on my door. And we started talking, just, you know, neighborly talk. And then she started talking to me about the Lord, and I was like a sponge. I was just sponging it all in. And she was praying with me, and little did I know that she was an alcoholic at one time, so understood the whole alcoholism thing. And so she was teaching me about that before I was even going, like, each step. Timing was God's timing, for sure. For sure, there is no doubt about it. He knew I needed him to get through, and he knew that I didn't quite know him that well, you know, to lean on him to get me through it. My faith really grew, and I remember saying, Lord, you say in your word that you'll provide for my every need. I'm needy. And he provided in ways that I couldn't even have imagined. He just continually brought enough money, and I was in a house, we had our own home, but he continually brought enough money for me to get groceries, brought money for me to get new shoes for my daughter to start school. Before my husband left, we didn't know we were separating, but before he left, he went and bought a half of a cow and had it butchered up. We had a freezer. Brought the meat home, it went in the freezer, and within just a short time, that's when he left. Well, he was on a payment plan with it. Well, I had no money, so I called the place and I said, you better come and get your meat because I have no money. You know, we're separated now. And so they were making arrangements to come and get the meat, and the phone calls, and then they said, oh, never mind, just keep it. I had like a freezer full of beef. And then I wasn't provided the money to pay the mortgage. So the mortgage was going into arrears. And I got a letter saying, we're going to take your house from you. And I said, okay. And I remember someone had given me a little mum plant. So I went out to the garden and I was planting the plant, and I said, well, Lord, maybe the next lady in this house will like this plant. And so looked after it all. And then within a month, someone came to the house and said, went over all the finances, and they said, oh no, we're not going to take you out of this house because we couldn't put you in anywhere cheaper than what your mortgage is. So the girls and I got to stay in the house. And then, just a few weeks after that, my husband sent money over to our bank to pay all the arrears. And we hadn't spoken in for like a year and a half, so he didn't know that I wasn't paying. But so it was all caught up. Now that's not a coincidence. That's God's provision. So that was when I knew I could trust God. And that's when I started praying, expecting that He was hearing me and that He would answer. Not always the way I thought it should be answered, and not always in my timing, but definitely He hears and answers prayer. I went back to the church that I grew up in, and they, of course, welcomed me with open arms, and there were some tears because they heard, I had told them what had happened, and so, that was answers to their prayers, too, that Joanne, had come back to the Lord. Some issues you think, no, nobody's gone through this before except me, but no, there's all kinds of issues that most of us have gone through. The other Christians and become your family, and you can just let yourself be you and ask for people you trust to walk with you and pray you through a lot of these things. Sometimes life on earth here can be really tough, but when we know that He is going to use it for our good or for somebody else's, and that when we get to spend eternity with Him, we're not even going to remember this stuff. My mom was a very fearful, anxious woman. All of my sister and our lives. We didn't know that when we were kids, but as we became adults and kind of started understanding life, it was like, oh my gosh, Mom is so afraid. And she was a stroker. She stroked often, and so we thought that's what was going to take her life, but it didn't. It was pneumonia that took her life, which was surprising. But we had, I think, 4 days with Mom. The doctor had called and said that she needed to go back to the hospital. She had had a test, an x-ray or something. She needed to go back to the hospital because he saw fluid in her lungs. Well, the pneumonia was growing so quickly that they couldn't get it all out of there. I asked the doctor, what's happened? And he started talking some doctor language, and I said, excuse me, but are you telling me she's on life support? And he said, yes. I said, oh! So I called my sister, and we went over to the hospital. And from the moment we got there, she was so peaceful, and she was able to communicate with us. We had a wonderful day and a half of communication. And we just were in awe that this fearful, anxious woman was just being taken by God's hand and walked through to eternity. Like, even my dad, who is not a Christian, said, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And we kept saying, Dad, this is God. This is definitely God's doing, because Mom wouldn't be able to do this. And he agreed with us that, yeah, it is God. And so we were absolutely thrilled with that she was not suffering anymore with strokes, that she was home with her Lord, and that she was healthy and happy and waiting for us, But it was beautiful beyond words, because we could see God all over it. I love the verse about God knitting us together in our mother's womb. He knew me before my mom and dad knew me, and he directs my path as I laid out. As I get up each day and say, Lord, what do you want me to do for you today? And sometimes, you know, I just walk through the day and there's nothing, but other days it's like, wow, who'd have thunk? Who'd have thought I would be ministering to someone, you know, where I'm working or whatever. And he's just been so faithful to me my whole life. When I talk to anybody about praying, you know, my kids or whoever, I say, don't pray if you're not going to expect something. You know, pray. You're talking to God, and He knows us anyway. He knows what we're thinking. So just be open. Just lay yourself open and watch what He's going to do. And so, you know, another promise that He'll never leave me. Even though I left Him for a period, He never left me, and He won't leave me. And I'm just so thankful for that.